Okay, so with handhelds, they are becoming more and more popular, and because they're becoming more and more popular, you need to get a handheld, I guess, because that's what everyone seems to be doing. So let's talk about which handheld's worth it. So I'm going to be talking about three: the Steam Deck as a whole, the ROG Xbox Ally as a whole, so that includes the regular and the X version, the Switch 2, and that's pretty much it. So let's talk about performance in games, okay? So, how good is the performance? Well, actually, it's a bit weird because the Switch 2 can do 1080p, 60 FPS, but it can't really do 120 in 1080p. Because, well, there hasn't been any game so far that has been able to do 1080p 120. They might be optimizing some games in the future that can do 120, but at the moment it's just stuck at 1080p 60 FPS. And the only game that can do 120 is the Metroid Prime Beyond, and that can only do 720p, so not exactly good. The ROG can do 1080p, 60 FPS high. It can do that in games. Maybe not the more demanding titles like the latest Call of Duty, so Black Ops 6. It might not be able to do that, and it might not be able to do 1080p high in the Black Ops 7. Maybe not Battlefield either. I mean, who cares about Black Ops 7? So yeah. The ROG is also able to do 120 plus FPS in games. So in games like Fortnite, you might be able to get like 144, 165 FPS, which is good. But also you capped at that 120Hz display, which I will be talking about later. And the Steam Deck, it can't really do 1080p high because, well, it can't do 1080p, it can only do 800p. And high, yes, it can do high, but it's more of the less performing out of the ROG and the Switch 2, in my opinion. Because, well, it can't do 1080p, and the display is very, very limiting, which I will talk about later. So, the performance, I'm going to give it to the ROG, because even the regular one can outperform the Steam Deck, due to it having, well, better performance with the CPU and having more RAM, while also having more cores and threads. So, exclusive games, let's talk about that. So, the Switch is the only one that pretty much has exclusive games. So, exclusivity, would I say it's worth it? No. Just because the PC, they have their exclusive games, so essentially it's just the Steam Deck and ROG versus the Switch 2. So I want to talk about this. So if you're a big Nintendo fan and you like playing the classics, the Switch 2 would be for you because you can play GameCube games, not all of them. There's like a very small handful at the moment. And also you can play probably a couple of extra games such as the Virtual Boy, which no one really gives a crap about. So there are a couple of exclusives, such as like Pokemon, you've got Mario, you've got all of that fun stuff, you've got Mario Kart World, you've got Donkey Kong. So if you do prioritize Nintendo family-friendly exclusives, then Switch 2 would be for you. So I would take that to Switch. However, if you're more of a solo gamer, which I can guarantee a lot of you would be, then I would recommend either console because they both have Steam, they both have Xbox. However, for EA games, so games like Battlefield, I would recommend the ROG because apparently Steam has a hard time, and I will put the reasoning right on screen. I don't exactly have it on my notes at the moment, but the Steam Deck has a hard time with, apparently it's anti-cheat, so not sure why, but I'll give reasoning on display right here. So, speaking of which, let's talk about the specifications, so RAM, storage, etc. So, how much RAM does all it have? So, Steam Deck has 16 gigabytes, so that's good. Good enough, high enough standards, I guess. The ROG has two variants, so the regular one has 16 gigabytes, while the ROG Xbox Ally X has 24 gigabytes, which is good. And the Switch has 12 gigabytes, so it's the worst out of the bunch. However, the games are optimized, so it will be using that 12 gigabytes effectively, while the others aren't really optimized as much, because it really comes down to the developers in how optimized they are, whereas the Nintendo itself, the console, gets it optimized. I don't really know how to explain that as well.
Boring!
Okay, I'm trying to swear less. I'm trying to make it family-friendly content. Jesus, my English sucks. Okay, next. So, storage. How good is the storage? So, both the ROGs have 1 terabyte. And the original, I think, has 500 gigabytes to a terabyte. The Steam Deck has 500 gigabytes to 1 terabyte. And the Switch has 256 gigs. So, the Switch has worse storage and worse RAM. But the issue as well is the storage will not be used long, because I can guarantee that storage is going to get eaten up with the next Call of Duty or next Switch game that's probably going to be like 50 gigabytes big. So yeah, the storage is horrendous. So storage goes to Steam Deck and the ROG because they're both pretty much the same. So display and refresh rate. Jeez, my English does suck. So display, refresh rate, and quality. So let's talk about this. So the Switch 2 has a 1080p 120Hz LCD and 7.9 inch. So to say that's slower, 1080p, which is good. Pretty much the standard for handhelds now. 120Hz, which is also the standard. LCD, which is meh. And 7.9 inch, which is the biggest out of the handheld that we're talking about. The ROG has 7 inch, which is the smallest. An IPS, which meh. 1080p and 120Hz, which is good. The Steam Deck, however, this is going to be a bit of a different topic now, because it's a bit different, because, well, it's older, yes, but it's different and unique. So it has a 7.4 inch. The Steam Deck has a HDR OLED, which is better out of the two. It has a 800p display, which is worst out of the two. And it has 90Hz, which is also worst out of the two. So for this, I would say OLED is good because, like, it's really crystal clear, it's amazing. But if you're after frames, I would say the ROG. And the Switch is just there. So the CPU, let's talk about the CPU. So the Xbox Ally has a Ryzen AI Z2 Extreme with 8 cores and 16 threads, which is a really good CPU, which means you're going to get a really good amount of performance. So because of that performance, you'll be able to perform really good in games. And I think the Z1 has 8 cores, 6 threads. I will have to switch it up and I will put it on the display right here. Okay, Steam Deck. So Steam Deck has a custom AMD APU with 4 cores and 8 threads, so not as good and not as powerful. The Switch 2 has a NVIDIA Tegra custom CPU, which we don't really have many specifications for, other than the fact it performs decent. So there's not really much with the CPU, because there's not really much stated, but the battery life is something that is stated, and with facts and figures. So let's get into the battery life. So the ROG has 2 to 5 hours, and the main reason why is because it's a really big performing console. It's going to perform like mad. It's going to give you the highest amount of performance, yet it is pricey, which I will be talking about later. The Switch 2 can hold up to 2 hours to 6.5 hours. Now this depends on how optimized the game is. It could be a AAA game, which will last 2 hours, or it could be like a really small performing game, like Minecraft, which can perform like 6 hours. Steam Deck OLED, however, is something to talk about because it can perform up to 3 to 12 hours. And the reason why is because if you manage to get it to quite low, so 15 watts, it can perform really good. And while, yes, the Steam Deck isn't exactly as powerful as sets like Switch 2 or ROG, what really comes down to it is the battery life, which is really good. And it's something that you really want to look for within a handheld. So that is the good thing. So another thing as well is I want to talk about the pricing. Because, well, yes, the Steam Deck has really good hours, it can perform really well, the others can perform meh. The pricing is a bit of a different story. So the Switch 2, the cheapest, comes around $450 on Amazon. So I will list a display right here. The Steam Deck OLED comes for $655. However, the LCD, the cheaper version pretty much, here it is right here. So I think it's about the same as the Switch 2. Probably a little bit more pricier, more expensive. And the regular ROG is $650, or $655 to be exact. And the ROG Xbox Ally X, I couldn't really find it on Amazon, but I have heard that it's about $1,000, so I'm just going to say $1,000. So there's your pricing, specification, display, performance, and pretty much everything there is to know about the handhelds themselves. I can't really give like a feel because, well, the only one I've used is the Steam Deck OLED, which does feel quite nice, but I'm not gonna lie, they're all probably gonna feel quite nice. So, conclusion. Let's talk about the conclusion. So, which handheld's the best? So, I'm gonna recommend two here. So, for good battery life and plays decent along with the OLED display, I'm gonna give it to the Steam Deck. Because while yes, it's got a really good display, I recommend this just for really good quality because of that OLED display, as well as like really high battery. So if you're just constantly going out, this will be your go-to. Because the display will be amazing, the battery life will be amazing, and overall it's just a good console. Well, good handheld. I can't really call it a console. The Switch 2 I'm not going to recommend just because it doesn't really do that well. Like, it's a budget well, I can't really say budget console because it's $450. It's pricey, but it's not really worth it when it comes to the other handhelds. The Asus Rog Ally, so the Asus ROG Xbox Ally and the Xbox Ally X, that is what I'm going to recommend for the higher performance stuff with good performance, has 1080p, 120Hz display. That will actually be put to use, unlike the Switch 2. Because the Switch 2 at the moment hasn't put that 120Hz to good use. And this console as well, the ROG Xbox Ally and the Xbox Ally X, can outperform the Steam Deck. So that's pretty much it to the handhelds. So I would like to hopefully get one of these handhelds so I can do like a full-on review, but I'm not putting that much money to a Steam Deck, so hopefully I can grow my community to the point where I get more views and subs and I can get a free Ally, but that won't be happening for another 10 years. So, anyways, that's it. These are the conclusions and also the specs, so I hope you enjoyed. So, overall, just get a Steam Deck or an Asus ROG Xbox Ally. God, that's a long name. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any video ideas, just let me know down in the comments. I'll probably do them. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyways, enjoy and have a good day.